spotlight, safe to say, is on the governor's race, with three major candidates in what could be a really tight race. Democrats Xavier Becerra, Tom Steyer, and Republican Steve Hilton. Two of them will move on to the November general election. Joining me live to share some insights, Lonnie Chen. Lonnie is a fellow at the Hoover Institution, a Stanford lecturer, lots of other things. Hey, Lonnie, I know Republicans remain optimistic that a GOP candidate will make it to the general election. What do you think has to happen for that to be true?
Well, you have to see enough consolidation of that vote behind Steve Hilton. I think the big question is, was he able to consolidate enough of the vote? You had two major Republican candidates for governor, Chad Bianco and Steve Hilton. Obviously, the only way to make it into that top two was probably to be somewhere north of 20-something%. And the challenge is going to be, was Steve Hilton able to garner enough Republican and independent support to get him to where he needed to go? That will be the big question as these results begin to come in later tonight.
All right, well, on that note, we know that Bianco and Hilton apparently didn't much like each other. If they had managed to put that friction aside, Lonnie, could it have made a significant difference?
Yeah, look, I think so. The key for a Republican to get through to that top two is to basically consolidate Republican support. When I ran for state controller statewide in 2022, I didn't have a Republican opponent. I was able to sail through the top two primary into the general election with about 30% of the vote. And so that's something where if you don't have Republicans splitting up what is already a small piece of the overall statewide pie, remember, Republicans only make up about 25% of registered voters in the state of California. There just aren't enough of them to guarantee the success of a Republican candidate unless the field is effectively cleared for one of those candidates.
Well, what are the key counties to watch tonight to see if independent and crossover voters are voting Republican?
We're going to look at San Diego County in Southern California. That is traditionally a little bit of a bellwether in terms of how well Republicans are doing, particularly amongst independent voters. We're going to look at the Central Coast counties like San Luis Obispo, which was actually a county that I won in the general election in 2022. Traditionally has been a purplish county. That's one we'll have to watch. And then we'll want to look at the margins that Hilton's able to run up potentially against Bianco. That's really what we're looking at in some of the counties in the central part of California. But there's just no question. This is going to be a very intriguing evening because Democrats, we know, have held their ballots late. And so a lot of those ballots that will come in later, that's going to really account for what the ultimate outcome will be. So the results we see right after 8 o'clock may look nothing like the final results for the election, let's say a week from now.
That's a good point. Okay, I know you are a policy expert. You have advised presidential candidates, among others. Any policy proposals by the candidates that struck you as particularly innovative or interesting this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think both Tom Steyer and Steve Hilton managed to articulate ideas that were out of the box, whether on issues like housing, infrastructure development, certainly on economic issues with Steyer backing the billionaire's tax. I don't agree with a lot of what Tom Steyer put out there, but I think in terms of innovative ideas, those were the two candidates who I thought had the most interesting thoughts. Becerra, you know, he didn't really tell us what he stood for. He didn't really tell us much about his ideas. I think that was part of his campaign strategy. As putting my former campaign strategist hat on, I think the idea was, look, say as little as possible, be as sort of anodyne as possible to as many people as possible, and hope that you get through. But clearly the ideas primary would have been won by Steyer and Hilton.
Steve Garvey, a Republican with strong name recognition, former ball player, came in a close second in the primary for U.S. Senate 2 years ago. Then, of course, he got buried in the general election. But is there anything this year that might make it easier for a Republican to win in November?
I think there's a lot of frustration with the status quo, particularly down in the city of Los Angeles. You see Spencer Pratt, the Republican candidate down there, who has experienced a lot of success because of viral videos and the ability really to communicate this anti-establishment, anti-status quo message. I do think whether it's the fires that ravaged Los Angeles and the LA area in 2025, the state of the economy in California, the continuing disquietude over homelessness or public safety issues, these are all things that potentially could be an anti-incumbent push for someone like Steve Hilton. But look, it's really difficult for a Republican to win statewide. There's no secret about that, given the registration difference and recent history. So it's going to be a tough slog for whoever comes out of this primary if they're not a Democrat.
All right, Lonnie.